All right, hey, I'm Bill Reynolds with Beaufort Tours in sunny Beaufort, South Carolina. Actually, we're experiencing a little bit of rain right now, and this is common for this time of year. A lot of days you'll have 80 degrees, and some days you'll have a little bit of wind, and about once every 10 years it'll snow here in the January, February timeframe. But this is my first walking tour being filmed, and I'm looking forward to it, and hope you are too. And I like to say we pronounce Beaufort because it's so beautiful. The city was named after Henry Somerset, who was the second Duke of Beaufort, and I say Beaufort because it's a British nobility title. And there's a town in North Carolina spelled the same way, Beaufort, B-E-A-U-F-R-O-R-T. They pronounce it Beaufort, North Carolina. And I put out a call on Facebook to some local Beaufortonians about a month ago, and I got over 100 Beaufortonians had no idea why we pronounce it Beaufort. So I just like to say it's because it's so beautiful. But we had three. I'm going to cover the Antebellum plantation era, the Civil War period here in Beaufort, and then also the Reconstruction period, the aftermath of the Civil War. And so to start with the three main products we grew in this area, if you go about 20 miles north of Beaufort towards Charleston, you come to the Cumbie Ferry, or Cumbie Bridge, and that's where the Cumbie River comes down. And Harriet Tubman's name is on that bridge because during the Civil War she led the Cumbie Ferry raid. She led the Union there to free over 700 slaves from the rice plantations there, and so her name's on the bridge. She spent a lot of time in and out of Beaufort during the Civil War with her Underground Railroad. Now, out here on the Sea Islands, we had 55 plantations in the St. Helena district, and early on they were growing indigo, which is a small flower petal, pulverizing it into a dense, heavy paste, and then they were selling that to the monarchies in Europe as the color royal blue. And needless to say, in 1776, when we declared our independence from England, that was the beginning of the decline of indigo around here because England was our biggest customer. So we replaced that with Sea Island long staple cotton, had a much longer staple than the short staple cotton, and commanded double and triple the price. And this is before and during around the time of the development of the cotton gin. So the length of the staple mattered, and around here it was more like silk. There was actually a cotton triangle where they factored cotton from the south through New York, and then it was sent to Liverpool, England to be made into cotton cloth and shipped back to the south as fabric. So I went to an hour lecture on that one time, very interesting stuff. So with the profits from the Sea Island cotton, the plantation owners could have built bigger homes in their 55 plantations on the Sea Islands, but instead they decided to escape the summer heat and the mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases out there and come here to downtown Beaufort and start building summer homes like the homes along this street here, Bay Street, which is the main street in town. And so the summer homes have been likened to Newport of the South. Not quite as extravagant as the Vanderbilt homes in Newport, but for the South, very nice row of southern homes along the way here. Now what we're looking at here is the John Joyner Smith house, built in 1810. And in 1810 there was a tax in Beaufort on front doors. So if you look closely at the front door here, it's actually not a door, it's molding. That was a tax-saving device. Now on either side, the black shuttered windows have small doors down below the window called a jib window, J-I-B, like a sail on a boat. And that would open out and you could go in and out, putting the bottom of the window up, you could go in and out without having to pay tax on the front door because it's not a door on the front, it's just molding. They even put a Christmas wreath on the door every year at Christmas time, so to make it look like a front door. But it's amazing that they don't just cut through and make a door out of it. Now if you go back and watch the movie The Big Chill, that was all filmed here in Beaufort, and the funeral procession actually comes down Bay Street here, and you see all the boats out in the river. This is the Beaufort River, part of the Intracoastal Waterway. And speaking of The Big Chill, you have all the now famous actors and actresses. You've got Glenn Close, Mary Kay Place, Meg Tilly, Kevin Kline, Jeff Goldblum, William Hurt, Tom Berenger. But when they were filming the movie, there was one more actor who played Alex, and all the friends had come to Beaufort because their friend Alex had committed suicide. And when they were filming it, the actor playing Alex thought that he was going to be in the movie because he had some lines and some flashback scenes. When they put the final cut of the movie together, they only showed Alex from the neck down, hence he was the corpse. So the local trivia question was, who was the actor who played Alex? And the answer is Kevin Costner.
No way!
2 years ago, Kevin Costner was being interviewed for his new TV show Yellowstone, which is fabulous, by the way. And he was lamenting the fact that almost 40 years ago in an early movie he acted in the movie, and at last minute they cut him out. So he still has a grudge against the Big Chill. So we're going to go ahead and walk on down the street here and see a few other houses along this area, again known as the Newport of the South.
Bill, we got a couple people saying hi right now.
How's everyone doing out there?
Diana from Mexico, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Diana.
We've got Foley Dude reaching out from pretty close from Foley Beach.
Okay, Foley's right up the road from here.
We've got Kristen calling in from Texas. Paxis.
Wow.
Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Now these are some of the houses along the way that that we'll take a look at as we go here. Interestingly enough, Beaufort is as far north on the east coast of the United States as you can go and still reliably grows citrus. So we're going to see a kumquat tree here further on down the street. But right now the azaleas are starting to bloom, and if anyone's ever watched the Masters Golf Tournament in Augusta, they have azaleas all over that golf course, and they actually ice down the roots to keep them from blooming until the week of the Masters in April. But here they're already blooming. So a lot of beautiful homes, all paid for with the Sea Island long staple cotton money. And another construction material around here, we have lots and lots of oyster shells. And so the Indians and early Spaniards developed a process to take the oyster shells, burn them in a fire, scrape out the burnt lime, that was your cement, add water, sand, and more oyster shells, and then make a slurry, kind of like concrete, make a 14-inch wide mold out of wood and pour it in there and wait 2 weeks for it to dry. Then they would pull the form off when it was dry and move it up. And so what you get is this house we're looking at right here is called the Tabby Manse. Tabby was the oyster shell mix, and this house has 14-inch thick walls of tabby. Then they put a plaster on there, and they take a straight edge, draw lines on it, and make it look like it's made out of concrete block, but it's actually not. And then over on the right side of the house there, you can see that's a kumquat tree.
Oh wow, yeah it is.
Now there's a Caribbean influence here. We had slaves who came to this area from Barbados and other Caribbean countries. And so a lot of the houses are either white or off-white color, and then they have a very colorful porch on the front. That's very common around here. Let's go ahead and walk on down the street. We'll see some more homes.
We've got two Marks have joined us. Mark Kevin says hi, and we've got Mark from Barcelona as well. So there.
Barcelona, hola. I went to Spain when I was in college, loved it in Spain.
Nice.
Went to Madrid and also to Sevilla. And no, I'd love to go back someday.
We've got us on.
Now we have some more homes here. I'm going to talk about the next one up here. But you can see the pastel colors on the front porches, very Caribbean. Beaufort was founded, by the way, in 1711 by the British, and the following year they started building their Church of England here, and so we have some beautiful churches in town. This large house here was actually moved here in pieces from another location several hundred years ago. It's the Cuthbert House Inn, and it's one of our bed and breakfasts here in town. Its claim to fame is that not only is it haunted, it has a pantry ghost, and you can go into the pantry and walk around the corner in the kitchen, get something out of the pantry, close the door, turn the light off, and walk back, and 10 minutes later the light's on, the door's open. And so it's definitely haunted. But also in 1865, General William Tecumseh Sherman of the North spent one night here. One of his men had bought this house at the federal government tax sale. And so that was after burning Atlanta, think Gone with the Wind. Did not burn Savannah. They say Sherman had a girlfriend there. He promised he wouldn't burn Savannah. Otherwise Savannah would have been burned. Didn't burn Beaufort because by that point in time we were a hospital town for the Union. I'll explain more about the Battle of Port Royal in a minute. And he was on his way to burn Columbia, the new state capital of South Carolina. So that was all in 1865 when he stayed here. So yeah, let's go back to the Battle of Port Royal. So first we'll go over here to the Secession House, and I'll talk about how South Carolina was the very first state to secede from the Union.
Question coming in, are all these privately owned and lived in, or are they landmarked?
There are many of them that are landmarked. There's a historic district here. Every single one of them is privately owned, except for the John Mark Verdier House, built in 1804 on Bay Street, and that's owned by the Historic Beaufort Foundation, so that's the only house in town that's open on a regular basis for tours. But if you come to Beaufort in October, in a normal year, non-COVID year, they've got the tour of homes, and they open up about 15 homes every year of private homes, and so that's a neat time to come here and check
Really
it out.
cool. Mark sends his congratulations, says it's a fascinating tour and you know your stuff.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, this house here, and you might want to zoom in on the sign there, is called the Secession House. So Edmund Rhett, his brother down the street, Robert Rhett, and their friends were meeting here for about 10 years prior to the start of the Civil War, because they knew that sooner or later the federal government was going to outlaw slavery. So it's said that they wrote the early writings of the Ordinance of Secession here, and then that was ultimately signed December 20th, 1860 up in Charleston, making South Carolina the very first state to secede from the Union. Then the other states followed suit. You had the firing on Fort Sumter in Charleston not too long after that. And then November 7th, 1863, the Union wanted to take a stronghold on the South Carolina coast, and so they brought in their largest flotilla of U.S. naval warships up until D-Day, World War II, beaches Sound on the other side of Paris Island. So Paris Island is, as you may know, is where so under the bridge out there, is where the Marine Corps trains on the East Coast of the United States. And on the other side of Paris Island is the Port Royal Sound. It's between Hilton Head on the south side and Beaufort on the north side. So the Union brought in 75 naval warships, again the largest flotilla up until D-Day. They maneuvered in an elliptical pattern, firing continuously on Fort Walker on the Hilton Head side, taking it out so handily that the Confederates on the Beaufort side at Fort Beauregard abandoned the fort. Now the other thing about that particular battle is that Fort Beauregard and Fort Walker had cannons on both sides of the Beaufort River, but the cannons, when they fired, couldn't reach the center. So the Union saw that and came right down the middle, and they came and took out the forts. So word got downtown here and out to the Sea Islands. Things aren't going so well out there for the Confederates. And the locals, everyone except for the 10,000 slaves they left behind, decided to leave town pretty much in the middle of the night. There was even talk of half-eaten sandwiches left behind. It was known as the Great Skedaddle. So they skedaddle out of town, the Union comes in, decides to take over the area, and they realized they just inherited 10,000 slaves, had to come up with a plan to house, clothe, feed, and educate the slaves, which they ultimately called the Port Royal Experiment. They found two abolitionists, we'll go ahead and walk down here while I'm talking. Yeah. That they found two abolitionist missionary women from Philadelphia, Laura Town and Ellen Murray, who came down here in 1862, and they started the Penn School to educate the newly freed slaves. And that was out on the barrier island here, St. Helena Island. And Laura Town and Ellen Murray actually lived out here for the rest of their lives. And Laura Town died in 1901, Ellen Murray in 1908. This is actually the manse, or the house of the preacher of the original Church of England, which is now an Anglican church. And this was on the tour of homes, as a matter of fact, about 5 years ago. So this is a beautiful house inside. And again, they're all private on an annual basis. So Laura Town and Ellen Murray started the Penn School. Eventually, now it's called the Penn Center. And back in the 1960s, the Penn Center was the home of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. You had civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, even folk singer John Baez came here to Beaufort, to the Sea Islands, for their meetings, and it said that Dr. King actually wrote his I Have a Dream speech while he was staying here. He came here to Beaufort on several occasions. Now also, if you've seen the movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Jim Williams was the character played by Kevin Spacey, and in the book and the movie, he came over to Beaufort because Minerva, who was the witch doctor in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, was married to Dr. Buzzard. Dr. Buzzard was a Gullah doctor out on St. Helena Island, and his real name was Stefan Robinson, not Dr. Buzzard. That was just a stage name, and you would go to him to have a root, put a root on somebody. So a black root would be an evil spell, a white root for health. He had all different color roots, and you would pay him cash. He didn't take any checks or anything. This is around the 1950s. And so he lived out on St. Helena Island, and he was Gullah. Now Gullah, the term Gullah, is the term used to describe the Sea Island African slaves from the Sea Island that are the descendants of the slaves who are on the Sea Islands of North and South Carolina. If they're on the Sea Islands of Georgia and the northern part of Florida, they're known as Geechee. Now some people combine them into Gullah Geechee, Nation, that kind of thing. But around here, for instance, Candace Glover won American Idol in 2013, and she was from St. Helena Island right here in Beaufort. We all voted for her, by the way. And she won. And if you asked her if she was Geechee, she would say, oh no, I'm Gullah. So around here, the descendants of the slaves are Gullah. Now, the Red House Inn is another bed and breakfast here. And this is where a lot of the Hollywood movie stars stayed during the heyday of movies here, which started in 1979 with the filming of Pat Conroy's book, The Great Santini. And so the famous stars who've stayed here, you've got Kira Sedgwick and her husband Kevin Bacon. Pat Conroy's been here, Nick Nolte, even Gwyneth Paltrow stayed here. I had a guy on a tour about a month ago and he said, I slept in Gwyneth Paltrow's bed. And I said, well, she's still there, and she's been gone from here about 35 years ago. So, yeah. Not quite. Also, a movie was filmed on the front porch here called White Squall, sailing movie with Jeff Bridges as the sailing instructor in the Caribbean. And they filmed the beginning of the movie. They took a nondescript building on Carteret Street, and at the very end of the movie, the two boys in the movie had a little disagreement right up here on the porch, and the Red House Inn sign was, the same Red House Inn sign was actually in the movie. So White Squall was filmed here, sailing movie. Wow. I've had a few people on my regular tours who have actually seen the movie because it's a pretty obscure movie at this point. But we've had over 20 movies filmed in Beaufort. The Big Chill, The Great Santini, Prince of Tides, even Forrest Gump. About 80% of Forrest Gump was filmed in and around Beaufort. Now you think it's filmed in Savannah because the bench at Chippewa Square was the bus stop bench, right? The bus stop bench, and that was temporary too. That wasn't even a regular stop. But that was in Savannah, plus the feather floating through the sky at the beginning end of the movie was Savannah, but about 80% filmed here. So for instance, we've got the Gump Medical Center here in Beaufort. We got the bridge where he finished his cross-country run with all the microphones in his face. What you gonna do next? We got the bridge where he started his cross-country run, Challen Creek Bridge to St. Helena. I drove by it, or drove over it every day on the way to and from work, to and from my house. They put up signs to the right of that bridge that said, Mississippi welcomes you to the Magnolia State. The bridge downtown, right downtown here though, was the Mississippi River Bridge. And during the filming of the movie, they put they had the highway department put a Mississippi River sign up at the top of the bridge and leave it there for about a month. So people were going a little crazy over. It's obviously the Beaufort River, part of the Intracoastal Waterway. And Beaufort's a great town to visit. We get a lot of people who come here by sailboat and by yacht, going south for the winter and going north for the summer. And so a lot of people that I give tours to actually come here on their boat, and we're out on the tour. They always wanted me to take them to Burger King or something, which I've done. I've done it once in a while. Yeah. Now over the downtown bridge, there was actually a restaurant called the Steam. When they filmed The Big Chill here, Tom Berenger would go over there with the Big Chill crew and get some drinks and some seafood, and that's where he met his second wife, Lisa. So she was from Beaufort back then. All right, let's talk about this church here. This is the Tabernacle Baptist Church, and it's got really special stained glass windows. They had a book launch here about 2 years ago for Robert Smalls, and right over here in the graveyard is a bust of Robert Smalls. He was a slave who stole the steamship called the Planter up in Charleston Harbor. I'll go ahead and walk on over here. And so he was born here in Beaufort as a slave, and when he was 22 years old, he was farmed out to work on a ship up in Charleston called the Planter. It was a steamship. And one night when the captain and crew went into town, he snuck his wife, children, and friends on board. This is Reverend Hodges back here. He's the reverend for the church here.
Hello, sir.
And so Robert Smalls took the steamship past the 4 Confederate checkpoints, fourth one being Fort Sumter. Then he put out a white surrender sheet and surrendered the ship to the Union blockade. The Union made him commander of the ship for the remainder of the war. And after the war was over, they paid him $1,500 finder's fee. He came back to Beaufort, bought the house he'd been born behind as a slave for $610 and lived there for the rest of his days. He was the first African American from South Carolina ever to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives. Also served in the State House, the State Senate, instrumental in the purchase of Parris Island for U.S. naval ship rebuilding in the 1880s. It was turned over to the Marine Corps in 1915. And at the end of his days, he was in charge of the U.S. Customs Duty House here in Beaufort. So really some great books written about him. One's called Be Free or Die, written by Kate Lineberry. She sent me a copy of the book about 5 years ago, and it's such a quick read because the story is so fascinating about him stealing the ship. And then 2 years ago, my friend Rebecca Dwight Bruff, wrote a historical fiction book about Robert Smalls. She had read all the other books and decided she wanted to make surmise what dialogue and what stories, things that happened to him. And so she wrote a book called Trouble the Water. And at the Tabernacle Church 2 years ago at the book launch, it was on the anniversary of his date of stealing the ship up in Charleston. She had Marlena Smalls come and sing the gospel song, Trouble the Water. Marlena Smalls was Bubba's mother in Forrest Gump, and she was head of the Marlena Smalls and the Hallelujah Singers when Tom Hanks was singing in the choir, real stiff like that. That was Marlena Smalls' choir. So she sang Trouble the Water, and there was not a dry eye in the place. It was incredible. Now I talked about Harriet Tubman. This is where we're going to have the Harriet Tubman Monument. It's actually been sent off for casting, and so hopefully by the end of the year it'll be finished, and we'll be sitting right here. When Harriet Tubman came to town, she would stay at the Savannah House right next door here. There is some question as to whether this is the original location, but the Savannah House is where she would stay. And so this is a nice downtown house. All the houses here are private, so not available for tours, like I said, unless you come here for the open house tours.
And did you say before it was landmarked as well, so you can't make adjustments to the...
You have to get permission from the city and the Historic Beaufort Foundation Committee. Exactly. Which makes it a little bit tough to make changes to your house.
Yeah. How does it affect property values?
You know, property values here have dipped a little bit with the recession, but they've actually all come back strong. Right now, I've got real estate friends who are selling houses to people who don't even come to town. They buy them using Zoom. They do the Zoom, then they have a virtual closing, and the next thing you know, they own a house in Beaufort they've never been inside before. It's amazing. This house, by the way, here is interesting. If you've seen the TV show House Hunters or House Hunters International, this is one of the 3 houses they had a choice of. I remember that the rental income on the little house in the back there was $1,000 a month, so that factored in the equation. But the other interesting thing about this house is that there's no staircase inside the house. If you want to go up or down, you have to go up this outside staircase. Kind of unique these days.
Yeah. We did a tour in Savannah recently. So a lot of the things you're referencing, like the bus stop bench,
all ties together.
We visited those spots. So
okay.
Actually, when we put this video up online, we'll put little markers on it as well to the places that you referenced Savannah.
We'll tie them together.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. So about 5 years ago, I was trying to convince my brother to move here from Florida, and I took him to Bonaventure Cemetery. Did you go there? That was in the movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And he said, Bill, what's your fascination with this cemetery? I said, this is one of the most famous cemeteries in the world. This is where Jim Williams, it's where actually they rode in the rowboat. Minerva and John Cusack rode in the rowboat to the cemetery, and she was going to put a spell on somebody because she was the witch doctor, just like Dr. Buzzard here at Beaufort. Now across the street here is our Reconstruction era National Historical Park, selected 5 years ago by the National Park Service as the Reconstruction era National Historical Monument, and 2 years ago got elevated national park status on the same day as Fort Sumter up in Charleston. And we were chosen because basically once the Union came in here November 7, 1861, Beaufort was doing Reconstruction, was rebuilding from the Civil War and coming up with a plan for the 10,000 slaves they inherited to where it's a natural here. And once we got the national park status, that means we get more park rangers and more funding. So that's a really interesting addition to the Beaufort history because there's so much history here. It's amazing. This yellow building here is our visitor center now, but this was started back in the 1790s as the Arsenal, and it's made out of tabby, that oyster shell mix I was talking about earlier. It's got a courtyard here. It was mainly for storing munitions, artillery. There was never really any battle that was fought here. So this is where you come, when you come to Beaufort, this is where they have all the brochures and you can book your tours when you get here. And you can download the Beaufort Tour app that they're advertising right there. Upstairs is the Beaufort History Museum, so they have rotating exhibits up there of what there is of the history of Beaufort.
The folks at home, if you want to use that QR code, now you can too.
just hit the code and it'll pop up on your phone. Another movie filmed right here in the building across the street, which is now Nevermore Books, was a scene from the movie Something to Talk About with Julia Roberts. In the scene, she's inside there and it's a tack shop and she's buying some clothing and horse stuff, and she's on the phone with her best friend confirming that yes indeed her husband Dennis Quaid is sleeping with most of the women in her Savannah Women's Club. Huh. So the movie took place in Savannah, but they used Davant Plantation, which is about an hour west of here, and her father in the movie was Robert Duvall, and he had a horse farm. And so this is the building where they filmed that scene. Now, at that moment in time, it was late 80s, she was on a landline phone before cell phones, and as soon as she confirmed and she finished filming her scene, she asked for a backdoor entrance into the Beaufort County Library behind here because she had just married Lyle Lovett and she didn't want to have to answer the reporter's questions. Why in the world did you marry Lyle Lovett? I don't think she ever answered the question. She just divorced him a year or two later. So that scene was filmed here with Julia Roberts.
Bill, real quick, I just noticed something here on the tree, on this palm.
There's a tour of trees.
No way.
Yeah. There's a booklet you can get at the visitor center we just walked by, and it shows all the tree numbers. By the way, this is the Sable Palm. This is the state tree of South Carolina. And palmetto palm, or cabbage palmetto they call it. And it's on our state flag, and the reason why is because there was an unfinished fort up on Sullivan's Island north of Charleston, and General Moultrie asked his men to cut the palmetto logs down, finish the fort with the logs, and they did that. And when the British cannonballs fired on the fort, the cannonballs got sucked in or bounced off, and so they credit the palmetto tree with saving the early state of South Carolina. There's also a story that the cannonball, that the South Carolina Revolutionary soldiers ran outside, grabbed the cannonballs, and they had the same diameter cannons as the British, and they actually fired them back at the British warships.
Is that apocryphal or is that true?
I've not confirmed it, I wasn't there, but on a tour, one of my tour takers said, turnabout is fair play.
Through the mists of time.
Exactly.
Anything can
I think we can still make it.
Yeah,
This is Carteret Street, named after one of the 8 Lords Proprietors who were given the territory of Carolina, the Carolina colony by the King of England. And this is Craven Street, another of the 8 Lords Proprietors. And this Craven Street's been voted as one of the most beautiful streets in America. On the end we just came from, they're antebellum homes. And on this end down here, we have Victorian style houses. So by the way, when I say antebellum, the word antebellum is Latin for before the war, literally just before the war. But antebellum with a capital A is before the Civil War. And it covers the history, or either the history or the architecture before the Civil War. Is your dad the mayor? Stephen Murray. This is Stephen Murray's house. I saw y'all a few weeks ago. I was going by in my golf cart giving a tour and y'all waved to me.
Have a wonderful day.
He's our new mayor. He was elected.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you doing? He was elected back in November.
I felt weird about filming kids all of a sudden. I don't
Sorry
know
about
if I should do that.
Yeah. So this is the Victorian end of the street. After the Civil War was over, they were looking for new ways. They stopped picking cotton and growing cotton around here, and they started mining something called marl out of the Beaufort River, M-A-R-L, high in phosphate content. So basically it was fertilizer. And with the profits from that, they started building these Victorian style homes. Now, if you've seen Mrs. Doubtfire with Sally Field and Robin Williams, those Victorian homes are much grander. They're called the Painted Ladies in San Francisco. Well, this is our little Victorian row here. Except for this home, this is antebellum. The house itself actually burned down, the original house here, and they kept the staircase and they built a new house around the staircase. So this is the second home built around the staircase here.
The staircase is beautiful with that kind of porthole there.
The other story you'll hear sometimes is that the reason for the double staircase is because during the antebellum period, The men went up one side, the women went up the other, because if the man saw the woman's ankles, he had to marry her. So
Trap.
we see a lot more than ankles nowadays, but back then it was just the ankles. But these are some beautiful antebellum, or beautiful Victorian homes, 1890. Now we had the great hurricane here in 1893, so that was pretty much the end of any new wealth in the area because the hurricane took out lots of people's houses. Over 2,000 people died in that particular hurricane, so that was a tough one. Now this bluish house here is one of my favorite colors, and it was on the tour. This house was on the tour of homes 5 years ago. So a lot of people say, well, I ask them on the tour, what color you think it is, and be specific. And they say, one woman says periwinkle number 302, but she made that up. Actually, the color of this house is called gentle aquamarine. There's nothing gentle or aquamarine about it.
Nope. Guys who are watching from home, if you've got questions for Bill, don't hesitate to type them out into the chat. We're reading it and responding as we go, and helps us know that you guys are with us as we're trudging around in the rain for you right now. Poor Bill was saying, hey, we got really lucky. It looks like it's not going to rain on us. 10 minutes later.
Get a little bit of rain. Not too bad though, not too bad.
It's good.
All right, this house here locally is called the Castle. And this was in the movie Forces of Nature. It was Ben Affleck on a cross-country bus trip to marry Mara Tierney, but on the bus and the airplane on the way there to Savannah, in the movie this house is in Savannah, he's falling in love with the wild and crazy Sandra Bullock. So they filmed the wedding scene in the front yard here. Look at that tree, isn't that tree amazing? I had a federal government arborist on a tour a couple years ago, and he told me a tree like that would be 500 to 600 years old.
Yeah.
So it's just incredible. But the house looks like a castle, and so that's where it got its nickname. Now, Dr. Joseph Johnson finished this house in 1860 and didn't live here very long before the great skedaddle happened, and he skedaddled out of town. But before he did, he buried his silver and valuables underneath the floorboards of his kitchen. So we'll walk around the back of the house and we'll see what the kitchen looks like.
Beautiful.
And you can see we've got the flames there in front of the house too.
Diana reached out to tell us that she loves those trees and houses. Thank you, Diana.
I get asked about this particular tree a lot of times because it's bald. It has no bark on it. And one woman thought that the Spanish moss is growing out of the tree, but this is actually called Crepe Myrtle. And you'll see a lot of these around town here. A lot of people just trim them back for the year on the smaller ones. But Crepe Myrtle is a really beautiful tree. And then we're also surrounded by the palmetto trees here. Mm-hmm. Now we're also going to see some live oaks. Live oaks are a variety of oak tree called live oak because they actually have leaves all year round. Like up north, the oak trees lose their leaves for the winter and then grow new leaves in the spring.
Ah, so like evergreen oak trees.
Exactly, exactly. And oh, by the way, this hedge outside the house here, this is called Confederate jasmine, and has beautiful flowers in the springtime, and also has lots of pollen that it puts out. So the castle itself is actually haunted. About 8 years ago, I was hired to take the Beaufort Bonnet Company, 5 babies with baby bonnets, their mothers, and a film crew around town, and we spent the whole time here, about 5.5 hours, filming at the castle. And about 2 hours into it, I'd already walked all the grounds except for the opposite side of the house here, which is on the marsh, on the water side. So I walked around there and I hear this knock, 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 knock on the window. And I said, well, I'm just going to pretend like that didn't just... Hours later, when we were all leaving, one of the other mothers on the tour, or on the film shoot, said that she had heard this knocking on the window. Had anyone else heard that? And I said, and then I remembered the story. If you grow up a small child in Beaufort, you were told that there's a ghost named Grenache, and he came here with the French. He was a court jester, and he was killed by the French. and he's doomed to roam the castle grounds for the rest of his life. Now the funny part about that is they were 300 years apart from when the French were here and when the castle was built. So he had to wait a while to get that done. But anyway, only small children can see Grenache, the ghost. So I didn't see him, but I heard him. And I have no explanation for how that was possible. But I wasn't the only one who heard him.
Bill, you're giving me goosebumps. You're getting goosebumps. Thank you for working into some ghost stories.
We got...
Mark reaches out and asks, where do locals go for a beer? What's the local food and drink like here?
So we have a particular meal here that's called Frogmore Stew. So you take your crab trap and you put some chicken necks in there and you throw it off the dock in the morning, and when you come back at night you'll have 20 or 30 blue crab. You take those and you boil them in a pot of water, one of the big pots on a burner, and you put in corn on the cob, some type of sausage like kielbasa, and onions, and then you cook it all, boil it up, and at the very last minute you throw in shrimp on the top because they don't take very long to cook. And then you pull it out, you dump it on some newspaper, and have at it. So that's called Frogmore Stew, or some people call it Low Country Boil.
Awesome.
And so there's several restaurants in town that serve that. As far as bars go, Hemingway's down on the waterfront is a good place to go for a late night drink, like after midnight. There are other places like Plums, and actually the bar at a restaurant called Wren is really nice, W-R-E-N, Wren, and Saltus River Grill, which is has a nice bar and great food in there as well. If you want to go to the place where the shrimp boat scene from Forrest Gump was filmed, though, where all the shrimp boats were wiped out by the hurricane, there's a restaurant 10 minutes from downtown called Fish Camp on 11th Avenue. And when they filmed the shrimp boat scene where all the shrimp boat fleet was wiped out by the hurricane, they had fire engines and they had jet engines to propel the water and make it look like there was this huge hurricane going on. And all the shrimp boats were wiped out except for the Miss Jenny, or Jenny. And so that gave Forrest a monopoly to all the shrimp in the sea.
And Captain Dan.
And Captain Dan, he said Lieutenant Dan, Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan, sorry.
And, yep, Lieutenant Dan. And so that's when the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company became wildly profitable. Also, and that's when actually the USC, the University of South Carolina Beaufort Performing Arts Center, was the Gump Medical Center further down the road here in Bayou La Batre, Alabama. I had a mother and daughter on the tour one time, and they started laughing hysterically when I said that. And I said, what's so funny? He said, we're from Bayou La Batre, Alabama, but until this moment, we didn't know where the Gump Medical Center was. Well, let's look at the backside of the castle here. It looks almost like a totally different house from the backside, and it's got another 400 to 500-year-old tree here in the yard. So when Dr. Joseph Johnson did the Great Skedaddle, he buried his silver and valuables under the floorboards of his kitchen, which is that separate little brick dependency building over there to the right. And during the Civil War, the castle was used by the Union as a hospital, and they used a little brick building there as the morgue. So after the war, he got lucky because he came back to Beaufort, found his silver who was still there under the floorboards of the morgue, and he was part of the less than 10% Beaufortonians who had money to buy their own house back from the federal government for what they call back taxes. The federal government took the cost of conducting the Civil War, divvied it up over the Southern Rebellion, nominal fee, but people didn't have any money at all to buy their house back, which means 90% of Beaufortonians lost their house. And there were some wealthy Northerners who came in and bought the other 90% of the houses here for pennies on the dollar. And so that was definitely a tough time back then. Also, Demi Moore and her then husband Bruce Willis spent a few nights in the castle when she was in town filming the torture scene from G.I. Jane, in the movie G.I. Jane. And also the owners every year, except for this year because of COVID, hire the Beaufort High School drama department to scare the trick-or-treaters as they come through the house. So that's my granddaughter wants me to take her trick-or-treating here next year so she can see that.
Very cool. Bill, quick question on the kitchen being separated from the rest of the house.
They didn't want the open flame inside the house because it could burn the house down.
Makes sense.
So that was a common thing to do back during that period.
Very logical, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Now this area here, known as the Point, had 3 to 4 feet above street level during Hurricane Irma about 4 years ago. And we know that because there was a guy in a motorboat going up and down all the streets using Facebook Live to show everybody how flooded their houses were going to be. And there was a lot of flood damage for sure. Out here, this
Hard to imagine
this little pond here, they call the house at the end of it the Little Taj. So on a day with no wind whatsoever, there's a reflection of the house, obviously little, nothing like the real Taj Mahal, but every town has to have a little Taj. And back to Hurricane Irma, in the Facebook video, there were not only was it 3 to 4 feet above street level here, but there were waves crashing in, just big waves. You could surf on them almost in the video. It's incredible, and they was all coming from that direction. So it was really crazy. Now the Gullah people are very superstitious. Gullah, again, are the descendants of the Sea Island African slaves on the Sea Islands of North and South Carolina. And they would take the residue of the indigo bucket and a paintbrush, and they would paint that color around the doors and windows of their house and call that color haint blue. A haint is an evil spirit. And so you'll see a lot of houses in Savannah, mostly I've seen it, where the doors and windows have a indigo blue paint around the trim. But in the modern day, a lot of people have what we call bottle trees. So right here are indigo blue bottles.
Oh my goodness.
And the idea is that the haints or evil spirits fly into the bottles, don't know how to get out. And so you can have a haint-free yard and a haint-free house. And so they're actually German wine bottles, white wine bottles, and the smaller bottles are Bud Light Platinum. I have a friend who would owned a store here. She'd buy a 6-pack of Bud Light Platinum for say $8, drink them all, and then sell the empties for $3 a piece, $18. So she'd make a $10 profit in free beer.
That's smart.
We'll head on down this way.
You're going to be careful saying things like that. You're going to get a lot of people moving here.
A lot of people are moving to Beaufort. It's a neat place.
Yeah.
So much history here.
Well, you're not just a historian. You're an incredible ambassador for this place.
Well, I appreciate
Honestly,
that.
I'm very
Thank you.
impressed.
Thank you. I love it here. And you haven't even seen Beaufort till you get out on a boat on the water. There are private beaches here that you can only get to by boat. There's an island that up until 3 years ago Ted Turner owned, and he sold it to the state of South Carolina, so now it's part of the Hunting Island State Park. You can rent his house out for where he used to live for, I think it's $11,000 a week now.
Wow.
So.
Good old Ted. I feel like he's always in the business of buying property, rarely selling it.
He doesn't really sell it, yeah. I think he's the world, and has more buffalo or bison than anyone in the world.
Yep.
This house over here is the house where Sally Field stayed when she was in town filming Forrest Gump. It looks a lot like the house that she lived in the movie. Also, Nick Nolte stayed here during the filming of Prince of Tides. The tree in the yard is known as an angel oak because the branches come down and touch the ground. The largest angel oak is on John's Island up near Charleston. And the fern on the tree is known as Resurrection Fern. Today it looks so brown you would almost swear it's dead, but because we're getting rain today, by tomorrow it'll turn vivid green again, and so hence the name Resurrection Fern. Will
really cool.
Bounces back nice and green.
So beautiful. What a charmed place to get to live and work in.
It is a beautiful place, it really is. And that's why I say it's beautiful Beaufort, even though nobody knows why we pronounce it Beaufort. Up here on the right, another angel oak where the branches come down and touch the ground. And also we have a lot of magnolia trees here. The rain's not too bad.
We wouldn't have all these trees if we didn't have the rain.
That's right, that's right. Now we have an annual ghost tour here every October, except for COVID this year. And it's a fundraiser for child abuse prevention. At this house over here.
Flipping to you. Sometimes the reason why I go slow, Bill, just so you know, is that they'll yell at me online and tell me I'm giving them whiplash and making them car sick if I go too fast.
You are the master of the filming, I can tell. So right here, the ghost of Mrs. James Rhett will be standing here with a lantern on the ghost tour. Now that's the same Rhetts as the Rhetts who had Secession House and the Rhett House Inn, but this is one of the offspring of them. And Mrs. James Rhett is standing out here complaining that her husband tricked her into marrying him because he promised her a fine southern antebellum home, and when she moved in she realized it was only 2 rooms down, 2 rooms up. And when we walk around the side of the house, you'll notice the house is almost as much porch as it is rooms. So we'll go ahead and walk around the side here and take a look at it. But the ghost tour is, they do walking versions of the ghost tour, and then they also have a horse carriage company that does the carriage tour part of it every year. And hopefully by this coming October, we'll be back to normal again, and they'll have the tour.
Bezrat Hashem. Inshallah, God willing.
There you go. So when you look at the house here, and the addition on the back to the right there is much newer. So the house had 2 rooms down, 2 rooms up, and that was about it.
Amazing.
All right, you know what, I think, I didn't know how long it would take us to do an hour, but I think we'll also get to see a bonus, the Big Chill House.
Uh-oh.
And that was
Folks
filmed.
love bonuses.
That was filmed here in 1983. Originally used in 1979 as the Great Santini House. So the author, Pat Conroy, moved to Beaufort when he was 15, and he had already lived in 13 different cities up until that point. And his mother encouraged him to adopt Beaufort as his hometown, which he did. He finished Beaufort High School, then he went to the Citadel Military School for 4 years, got an English degree, came back to Beaufort, worked for 2 years as a high school teacher at Beaufort High. And then the 3rd year out, he started teaching, he took a job teaching the Gullah children on the Sea Island of Defusky, which is off the coast of Hilton Head. You can see it from Harbortown. In the book and the movie, it was called Yamacraw Island, but in real life, it's Defusky Island, where he taught. He was bringing the kids here to trick or treat in the summer, or in Halloween time, and doing field trips and all kinds of things during the year. And also, he refused to use corporal punishment on the children, even though the principal of the school insisted on it. And so after a year of that, the Beaufort County School Board fired Pat. He came back to Beaufort, wrote his first major novel, The Water is Wide, and that was made into the 1974 movie Conrack with John Voight as the Pat Conroy character.
Yeah, great book.
Another book that he wrote was called The Great Santini. In the movie, it was very autobiographical. It was about his father, who was a Marine Corps pilot, Santini. And in the movie, his father was played by Robert Duvall. This actual tree here is where one night when Robert Duvall had been drinking heavily and disappeared, the young Pat Conroy character finds him drunk and passed out right under the tree here. So this is where Robert Duvall slept there.
Wow.
And this is another example of an angel oak, just magnificent tree.
So impressive.
Lots of Spanish moss on there. Spanish moss is neither Spanish nor moss. It's actually, and it grows exceptionally well on the live oak trees, has a more or less symbiotic relationship with the tree. And it's also part of the pineapple family. You don't want to take any home with you when you come here though, because it's known to have little bugs in it called chiggers. Those are the ones that if they get under your skin, you have to kill them by putting a dot of nail polish on top of each one of them. When Ford was making the Model T, Model A Ford, they actually had a recall because they were using Spanish moss inside the seat cushioning material.
Oh no.
So they had a little chigger problem.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a recall from you getting bug bites from your brand new car?
Yeah, all over your butt and legs, and not where you want to be bitten. Anyway.
This field to the right here, this is known as the Green. It was purchased by the Beaufort Open Land Trust, so it can never be built upon. During the Civil War, it was a tent encampment area for the Union. And more recently, 1983, in the movie The Big Chill, they had a little touch football game where they all put on their University of Michigan shoes and shirts and all, and they did a little touch football game right out here in the Green.
I mean, besides just the amazing beauty, the historic preservation and restoration skill set, is there something else that draws the movie? I mean, there's so many movies here. Is it
the movies started here?
Or?
Actually, it's funny that you asked that. So the movie started here in 1979. This, by the way, is the Berners Barnwell Sam's house, built in the 1850s. It's made out of brick up top, and the pillars are made out of brick. If you can see the top right pillar there, you can see the shadow of brick coming through. I don't know if you can see that on video. But the base of the house is actually made out of that oyster shell mix I talked about earlier, called tabby. So it's basically sitting on the tabby base of the house. And this is a step up to get. Don't see those everywhere. So we had the great run of movies, and I like to say it was Pat Conroy brought the first one here with the Great Santini. We're about to see the Great Santini house, which the director of Lawrence Kasdan of The Big Chill liked it so much that 4 years later, it was the Big Chill house.
Gosh, I wish my grandmother wasn't. I mean, she's 95, so she has the right to be a little bit hard of sight at this point. She's quite heavy cataract, but she would love so much to see all of these houses. Because she's such a huge old film buff as well.
Over 240 antebellum homes, and then in 1907 there was a great fire, burned over 100 homes in one fell swoop. So today we have 90 antebellum homes left. So there were a lot more. There were about three times as many almost. So this house here is called Title Home, or the Edgar Fripp House. And again, 1979, used in the Great Santini. Now in real life, Pat Conner's family didn't drive up to anything as grand as this. They drove up to standard military housing at the Marine Corps Air Station. But as a matter of fact, in the movie, Blythe Danner says, when she sees the house, she says, "Oh, darling, you've outdone yourself," you know, the fine mansion. So like I said, then The Big Chill was filmed here 4 years later, 1983. And if you look out there, there's a new dock. The original dock in the movie was taken out by the hurricanes that we had. And so it's been rebuilt. But at the end of the dock in The Big Chill, that's where the two lovers from University of Michigan had dated each other, but then married other people. So they were reconnecting out at the end. When they were doing this house sold 5 years ago, and when they were doing the renovation to the house, they pulled up all the floorboards to look under make sure all the floor joists were safe. And they found a pair of children's shoes. During the antebellum building period, they would take a pair of children's shoes and put it under the floorboards to scare the haints or the evil spirits away. So when they put the house back together, they put the shoes back where they found them.
Wow.
But this house had a total makeover. As a matter of fact, the Great Santini basketball game was played around here, but they've taken all that out. And this is a brand new 3-car garage with a room over the garage.
Oh, wow.
And you can see they have gas lamps going here too as well. Well, I could answer any questions anybody has. You know, I'll tell you one funny question I get. What kind of plant is this? I get asked this all the time. These people on the tour said, we call that the tractor seat plant. So I asked my horticulturalist, Japonicus. Try to remember that name. Farfuvia. It has a green daisy-like flower that comes up out of the middle of it.
Joel says hello from Australia.
Oh.
Australia is just getting up to watch
good,
watch with us right
good
now.
Day, mate. That's on my bucket list to go to Australia. I'd love to go.
The shrimp here are better than there.
I'll have to go there and compare.
That's it.
I have to go there. Yeah, I want to go to the Gold Coast. Taste some of the wine down there.
That's it.
Down under.
Down under, indeed. Guys, if you've got questions, now's a great time. We were on the live version right now. We had a little bit of a cutout when you said the plant's name.
Oh,
again?
It's called Farfuvium japonicus.
Farfuvium.
Farfuvium, Farfuvium japonicus.
Japonicus. Great. Joel says if you come down to Australia, he'll give you a tour.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Which town is he in?
Joel is in Sydney.
Sydney,
yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Very cool. Is that, yeah? I mean, guys, if you've got questions, now's the time. Otherwise,
I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Yeah?
It's been great.
Awesome. Well, then I guess if you have follow-up questions, folks, and you haven't answered them yet, you put them in the chat. We'll get to them, in the next day if you're watching this as playback later on.
That'll be great.
Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like and share this video.
As much as possible.
And don't forget to look at the donation links that are posted with this video to help support Bill and what we've done today as we've trudged around in the rain.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
It'd be really wonderful.
And my website is BeaufortTours.com. You can go check out the tours.
A couple questions coming in right
Sure.
now because these guys are about a minute behind us.
Okay.
With our broadcast lag.
Okay.
But even though it's live. Mark is asking also. He hasn't heard a lot of wildlife. Are there birds out and about?
There are lots of birds, egrets and all kinds of birds here.
I guess they're quieter in the rainstorms.
I think so.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any anyway.
Great. Just lots of people saying thank you right now.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. Absolutely.
Great. Guten Nacht, Michaela. Vielen Dank. Thank you, Diana. So glad that you joined us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
In fact, I can spin this around. so that way you can read them as they're coming in too.
Okay.
And just people say thanks.
I'm going to put my glasses on, of
Too
course.
bad you get hurricanes, such a beautiful city.
Yeah, we've had 2 hurricanes in the past 5 years. The first one was Matthew, took the roof off my house. And then Hurricane Irma was the one that had all the flooding here.
Alba says, Beaufort is beautiful. Thanks, Alba. Always great to see you back again. Just want to say as well, I've been under the umbrella with the camera, and Bill has been in the rain the entire time, this poor guy. So thank you, Bill.
Not to worry, I'm used to it. And thank you, Diana, I appreciate that. It's a great, beautiful city, and y'all need to come here and visit sometime. It's really a fun place. I will say this also, I've lived in other cities in South Carolina. The people who live here in Beaufort, not only is it very international, I have German friends and other French friends. I'm actually the president of the Beaufort French Club. Je peux faire toute la visite guidée en français si vous voulez.
No joke.
I could. And actually, but my brain gets tired when I have to do all the dates. The dates are hard to, but there are just so many international people here, and people are extremely friendly, and it's a really great place. A lot of people retire in Beaufort and the Beaufort area.
Awesome.
So it's a wonderful place for sure.
Well, I look forward to doing a tour with you again soon.
Super.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'll let you do the honors. If you want to reach out and see in the top right-hand corner of my screen, there's a little end button. If you go and press that,